start the show, better take your seats. It's been a while, but I'm back on top. To the world is mine, I don't plan to stop.
A very popular place, and I may have made a slight error in timing. Booked the tickets at the same time as I put the tickets to Monticello, and I got it in my head that we were 2:25, and it was actually 12:45, so. We are so thankful that we're able to change our time, so we still get to see the mansion.
Tossed in like a castaway, what we wanted.
If you're enjoying our videos, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe.
They are restoring the wood, made to look like brick. It was painted, and then as the paint was still wet, they would apply sand to make it look like sandstone. I have a photograph right here of what the wood originally looks like underneath.
Don't give in.
Whenever I wonder whether we did the right thing coming and leaving our home and everybody we know and coming out on the road, and then we get to be in places like this where George Washington lived, died, and walked, and it overwhelms me with gratitude and joy, and I'm just so thankful that we're on this journey, but I'm also so thankful to be here. It overwhelms me.
Let's go inside.
So this is the servants' hall. It was for the servants of the Washington's guests. These were the guests, tutors, butlers, carriage drivers, things like that. They're most likely white, most likely paid.
My heart is sure to follow.
This building is also around the same size that the mansion originally was. It at first was just 1.5 stories, with 4 rooms on the first floor and 1 room connecting them all.
Further has a record, a reproduction of the one that General Washington got for his granddaughter. This is the oldest part of the mansion. These 4 rooms were the original house that George Washington's father built. One of many guest rooms and our dining room.
Take everything we have and let the new begin.
5 guest bedrooms right now. A lot of different types of people would have been staying in them. They would have been family, friends, foreign dignitaries like the Marquis de Lafayette.
Only 2 people had free access to this room besides the general. Christopher Shields, his enslaved valet, and Tobias Lear. The bookcase is original. The books represent his library, which was enormous for the colonies in the 18th century.
This is actually where the meals would be prepared for the Washington family and their hundreds of guests. Enslaved cooks Lucy and Nathan Gray would get as early as 4 in the morning to prepare this meal.
The tour of the house was incredibly fast. We probably spent no more than what?
A couple of minutes as they would describe the rooms that we were in and any questions, but the other groups were pushing right through, right behind us.
Right. I think the entire tour of the mansion took less than 20 minutes, if that. 40% of the artifacts here belong to George Washington or the Washington family, his stepdaughter and her family. Washington never had children of his own. Martha had 2 when they married, and then they ended up bringing up the grandchildren. One of my favorite artifacts here was the key to the Bastille, which was actually given to George Washington by the Marquis de Lafayette. It was very sad to me that the bedroom in which he had stayed was under construction, and they were hoping to reopen it in time for Bastille Day on July 14th, but we will be long gone by then. I'm wondering whether the people coming up behind me are bringing food. No, this is still a working farm, and the sheep all ran. I thought it was maybe food, but no. They all ran down here because they're going to go in the truck, and then they're going to take them to an open field to a run. And we were just talking about a little bit about the history of the enslaved people here. George Washington was famous for letting his slaves free upon his death, but what you have to remember was George Washington did not own many slaves. The slaves that lived here were owned by his wife, and therefore they went to the Curtis family, who did not let their slaves free. But this was on the grounds, and it is the memorial to the enslaved people who were kept against their will. Visited the tomb, which was quite emotional. We were lucky because there was a gap in all of the people that were visiting, and the lady took down the chain and allowed me to take much closer photographs, which was such a blessing, and what an honor to be able to sit and remember him for a short while. That tomb that we just visited was the first president of the United States, the man who led the country to victory in the War of Independence. He was an incredible man, very humble man, not a man that was very well educated. He only had an 8th grade education, and he was always very embarrassed by that, so he would read and read, but he always felt less. But anyway, that memorial tomb wasn't built until 30 years after he died. So 30 years prior to that, this is where he was laid to rest. The original family vault of the Washington family. But George knew that this was not only in a terrible situation, it definitely needed repairs. So in his last will and testament, he stated that he wanted a much grander scale, and it was built in the old vineyards, which is what we just visited now. But this is still in a beautiful location. So I was looking at this thinking, oh, maybe this is where they kept the boats before they took them on down to the water. No, this is where they stored dung, because with a farm you need dung, and you had lots of it. At one time, George paid an extortionate amount of money to have a carriage shipped to him from London. At this point, he was primarily bankrupt, but appearances must be kept up, and he insisted on having it. This is not it, but this is certainly a type of horse-drawn carriage that he would have owned. These riding chairs here, the front one is a reproduction, but the one at the back actually is from the 18th century.
After the tour of the mansion and the grounds, we went to the Mount Vernon Inn for dinner. You can spend an extortionate amount of money on souvenirs. We just had dinner with George.
We hope you've enjoyed our visit to George Washington's home. Join us next week as we visit Philadelphia and the room where it happened. Until then, we'll see you on the trail.